In the previous lecture modules, we talked about how within the context of one ontological framework, or possibly more than one competing ontological frameworks, theorists begin to start to delimit a domain by trying to identify unities and regularities that might knit together a set of phenomena into a common domain. As they do this, they begin to accumulate more data, not just more in terms of amount, but greater accuracy and greater reliability. They began to develop more sophisticated and elaborate experimental traditions, increasing the number and effectiveness of operationalizations, of experimental designs, of instrumentation, of methods and tools for data analysis, and so on, all in the service of formulating and testing models. An inflection point occurs when a paradigmatic case emerges within this context. Paradigmatic cases consist of theoretic models that are widely accepted as explaining, predicting, retrodicting, or manipulating some set of phenomenon that is understood as core or central to the domain as it is currently delimited. The paradigmatic case then involves a model that seems to capture some important fundamental relationships within the domain. In addition, these models oftentimes, most often in fact, show promise for future progress. So they're not just capturing the phenomenon that they emerge in, they're also showing potential to explain, manipulate, predict other related phenomena, perhaps even all of the phenomenon within the domain. So paradigmatic cases then are going to involve theoretic models. That means that they're going to have a set of categorizations that are related to one another in the context of a theoretic model. Some, though not necessarily all of those categorizations, will have operationalizations that tie them more tightly to the phenomenon and that allow theorists to see with experimentation and testing that the model in fact predicts the phenomenon, manipulates the phenomenon, explains the phenomenon with sufficient rigor. So the three elements then of paradigmatic cases at minimum are going to be those categorizations that constitute the model and the relationships that the model articulates between them, and the operationalizations that allow theorists to see that the model is in fact tightly tied to the phenomenon and is capable of predicting, retrodicting, manipulating, or explaining the phenomenon that it is connected to. Once a paradigmatic case emerges, theorists then start to work to structure the domain around the central insights of the paradigmatic case. As in many human activities, when someone achieves success, the idea is to try and propagate that success, to expand upon the basic formula as much and as long as possible. So theorists begin to work on tying the categorizations more tightly to the phenomenon, of developing more and diverse operationalizations, of modifying theoretic models to capture larger parts of the domain, of accumulating more data that will help them to understand how the model works and the extent of the model's predictive capacities, and experimental traditions that will help to further refine and test the original model, as well as permutations or extrapolations from it. So the paradigm starts to emerge as the basic features of an individual paradigmatic case start to become expanded and extended beyond those individual cases to try and incorporate as much of the domain as possible. In the next lecture module, we'll explore how the work of scientists to extrapolate and refine the initial insights of our paradigmatic case begins to restructure the domain around the paradigmatic case and to introduce a certain amount of regularity and convention in how scientists both continue in their research and utilize the products of the research to date.